And let's get into why you're not capable of setting boundaries, or if you're setting boundaries, you're feeling bad, you're feeling guilty, or you're setting them in a way that they are not going to be enforced. And this is a huge problem, because there's something inside of you, and it is not about knowing so much as about feeling, and about really in reality not believing yourself, what you say and what you do, what you want, what you need, and what you express. Okay? If you have grown up in narcissistic relationships, if you are son or daughter of a narcissistic mother, of a narcissistic father, of a covert narcissistic father, of narcissistic siblings, and in the end, you ended up in a narcissistic relationship with a narcissistic partner, you are more likely than anybody else to not having good boundaries and not having really a good idea of who you are, what your identity is, because you were never allowed to feel your feelings, to be there for your feelings, to acknowledge your feelings, and what you thought was okay, or what you perceived was okay, and what you felt was okay, was taken away from you basically, or was always like turned against you, that you would think in the end that what you feel, what you think is incongruent and is not, you're not worthy, you are not to be taken serious, and you're not important. You have no saying in what is going on inside of you. It is obvious that you've, like, for some reason lose yourself, to some degree inside of these relationships, and that's what they're aiming at. These relationships, narcissistic relationships, have chosen you to be the chosen victim, because they needed you to be right under them. They needed you to be a little bit under how they felt victim. They didn't show like victim. They had this second face in their lives, where they showed themselves towards the outside, like not the relationship with you, like a grandiose person, like a super applauded person, like a person who is capable, who is empathetic even, who is witty, who has it all basically, and who's, as I said, much applauded. And this is not congruent with what you have perceived this person to be inside of this relationship with you. And what people show outside is not necessarily how they feel inside. You don't confuse this. So the same with you. If you show boundaries, it's not necessary that you feel them, that you feel that you can rely on them, that you feel that you deserve them. So is it with those people. They can show up like their second face and their second appearance towards the outside, but it might just cover up all what is going on inside of them, feeling bad, feeling victimized, and not wanting to get in contact with their negative emotions, with their own guilt, with their own hurt feelings, with their own subjective feeling of being a victim themselves. So what are they doing? They constantly are looking for a scapegoat, constantly looking for this person who is then the victim in the relationship with them, which is possibly you who are watching this video. And if you have learned that there are important people in your life who have not acknowledged you as a person, who have not acknowledged your feelings, who have not acknowledged that what you think is right and what you think about your feelings or what you think about the dynamics was ever recognized as something valid, as something worthy, as something at least to be talked about, at least to have a dialogue over, then this is something you have understood about yourself, that you are not worthy, that you are not congruent in your way of being, that you are simply a person who has like a confused being, like living this confused being stage on this earth, which has no say and which has especially no access to your own emotions, and that these emotions are not logical to you. So if you are getting into a process where you would like to empower yourself from narcissistic relationships, from abusive relationships, from power relationships of which kind of ever being that, be it in the workspace or in your private space, you will have to put limits at some point. You will have to go the path of self-empowerment, and you will have to go the path of looking inside of you, how you really feel, what is really going on inside of you, and being assertive and putting limits has basically to do with understanding what you're feeling inside of you, what is going on inside of you, how you perceive the world, and if this is right, and how you think about it. So now you can think about things very much easier, in an easier way, like saying, oh, this is not right what they are doing. Oh, it makes me feel so guilty. It makes me feel bad. Makes me feel I should take care of them. It makes me feel like I'm nothing. Then you understand that you have to do something about it. This is beautiful, but this is usually not enough for you to proceed in really putting limits and believing yourself what you are saying there, or what you're doing there, what you're communicating there. And this is the emotional part of putting limits. You need to get in contact with yourself. You need to get in contact with this, let's say, this broken self inside of you, who was told that your emotions are not important, that your emotions are wrong, that your emotions are basically, your basic emotion is the emotion of guilt. Your basic emotion is the emotion of feeling this emptiness, this void inside of yourself, like not belonging, and feeling basically not loved ever, and not being able to love yourself because you have never recognized yourself, you have never listened into yourself, you have never visited yourself, and you've never been true to yourself. You've never, let's say, lived inside of this body and have connected with your emotions, with your calling, with your intuition, with your consciousness, with all these things which are going on really on a lower level, like not inside of the upper faculties of things you can understand, and things you can believe, and things you can like grasp rationally. But those are the things which have dropped down, and which are what we say are emotional, and which have been transported to you as something negative, usually, that you are not enough, that you are not lovable, that you are not worthy. And once you have internalized these ideas about yourself, you don't have the strength anymore to put limits, because you are so dependent on their approval. You're so dependent on somebody else giving you love that you can't even figure out anymore how to give yourself the fill, the fill with love, and the fill with recognition, the fill with esteem, the fill with confidence. You have never developed this. And once you get into this idea that you need to develop it, or you understand that you need to put limits because you're in such an abusive relationship, that you understand you need to protect yourself, you need to get out there because you're in a depression, or you're in a bipolarity, or you're becoming psychotic, or whatever it is. You need to understand then that you have to protect yourself. And this is the moment where you possibly start to put limits. But putting limits is not to understand that these people are doing wrong to you. It is if you feel you're worthy of putting limits, if you feel worthy of being protected, if you feel worthy of being there for yourself, and if you feel, and it's really feel, not think, and if you feel that it is worth it listening inside of you, and that what you find there, all those negative emotions, all your anger, all your guilt, all your sadness, and all this emptiness, that you can make contact with this, and that you are capable to communicate those emotions, and that this will be liberating at some point, that this will be the way out. And to this way out, like listening to your emotions and believing them, belongs necessarily to put limits to especially those people who have been more hurtful in your life and who are much more trying to get you under them, make you feel more victimized than they feel, although it doesn't appear to be that they feel like victims. So there's a big gap in what you maybe realize, what you want and what you need to do, and what you're capable of doing at some point, and you're not capable of doing it because your self-talk is essentially negative, is essentially activating your inner critique, which was nourished by exactly those people who said what you feel is not right, who you are is not right, what you think is not right, what you are, how you express yourself is not right, and how you are in your being is not right and is not enough. And that's wrong. And if you understand that, you understand that you need to get out of this, and you need to start listening to yourself and start listening to how you critique yourself inside of yourself with or through your self-talk. Once you put limits, once you want to express emotions. Of course, this all has to do with all like negative emotions. It all has to do with boundaries. It all has to do with processes which are not so funny, let's say, and which are not so elevating once you have to go through this. So this is not so much encouraging for you to get in contact with it, because everything which wants to come out of it is really dark, is sad, is empty, is inaccessible, and is diffuse, So the way out, and first to understand, if you need to put limits, you need to put limits. And usually at least your brain understands that And if you are sad, if you are depressed, or if you are whatever, bipolar, whatever you have developed in response to those crazy relationships you had to grow up with, whatever you have assumed you are, you need to understand that these feelings want to tell you something, that your reactions to your reality has a function, and that you need to get in contact with yourself, although it is hurtful, although it makes you get in contact with all the darkness, with all the sadness, with all what they have not appreciated you to be, with all the lack of love. Still, if you want to get out of it, you can't wait that somebody's gonna do it. So you need to put the boundaries, although you feel afterwards worse, you could say, although you feel afterwards that you're not worth it, although you feel afterwards more guilty, although you feel afterwards that you would like to flagellate yourself, and whoop yourself and make yourself even smaller than they would make you, in order to subdue again to the process of the power dynamics they have established and you have started to believe in, and you have started to serve, and wanting to get out of it is a purely emotional part. Is purely if you believe yourself that you're worth it, if you believe yourself that you can get out of it, if you believe yourself that you need to have a different life and that you can have a different life. Of course you need help with this. Of course, many times it is not enough to watch a video, but this will give you an idea of which can be and should be the way for you to get out of those dark dynamics and to be much more true to yourself and to listen to yourself and to be congruent with what you think and what you feel. And if this is not congruent, to get more information about it and to understand the twisted dynamics you're living in and to understand the codependency you have you have gotten into by believing them that only you can be good if they in the end will tell you that you are good. So if you put boundaries, you think you're even less good, you're even worse. And this makes you want to retract from putting boundaries, but this is not the way, because you're still they are feeding off you, and you are feeding somehow off of them, because you want them to approve you. You want them to be there for you, and you want them to feed into you to be able to grow and to be able to finally love you once they love you. But this is not the dynamics. You need to love yourself first, to put boundaries, to believe yourself, and to keep on going a way which is independent from their approval, that they can't feed off of you in an emotional way, like making you feel guilty, making you feel ashamed, making you feel just belittling you, or making you feel low, or just simply not recognizing your feelings once you express them in somehow. So the way of putting boundaries is not of knowing to put boundaries, because you will see that you put boundaries and nobody's going to believe you if you don't believe yourself. If you don't believe yourself that you are worth it, if you don't believe yourself that you can set these boundaries and that it is the healthier way for you, although your love cup is not filled, although you have believed until yesterday, that these are the people who will give you love or will take love away from you. So you have been relying on them giving or taking, and so you became completely dependent on them being the ones to fill you up with confidence, with love, with approval, with appreciation, with acknowledgement, whatever it is. And in the end, you left yourself more outside, because you didn't understand that you are the one who has to fill up the cup. And this is over the path of putting boundaries and believing yourself when you put boundaries. Okay, this is really tragic. So you need to keep on checking your self-talk, your inner critic, once you're walking the path of putting boundaries and understanding that they have no say in your life, and that you have to look for the help necessary to understand the dynamics and to start believing yourself that you are responsible for your feelings, and that only because you put boundaries right now, this is not, and it doesn't feel good, this is not why you should no longer do it. Okay, this is really important for you, that it doesn't feel right in the beginning, but you need to understand first that those dynamics are no longer healthy for you, and they weren't ever healthy for you, and that you need to get out of them by putting boundaries and by believing yourself while you do it, and supporting yourself, and looking for support outside of you, and looking for people who are helping you to replace your limiting beliefs, to replace your negative self-talk, to replace your inner critic who tells you all the time what they have told you, and to detect this inner critic and to detect this negative self-talk. Okay? And then you can little by little put boundaries, but understand boundaries to put them and to, let's say, follow up on them and to enforce them, let's put it like this, has essentially to do with you believing yourself that you can do it, and that you are worth doing it, and that has only to do with your self-love and with yourself connecting to your emotions and expressing them and being true to them, being true to yourself. And this is something you have to learn on the path while you're doing it. It's not going to come to you easy, but it's not a way either to stay in your comfort zone and say, no, it's been better, I've been better with putting boundaries, but staying in those relationships where you are the victim, and where there is people who need you to be the victim, and they're not going to let go of this concept, and they're going to subdue you constantly, to be able to feel themselves less as a victim and having to become responsible for their own emotions and for their own behaviors. So putting boundaries, setting limits is essentially an emotional thing, is a thing of your self-talk, is a thing of the critique inside of yourself, your negative self-talk, and which has become a limiting belief system that you aren't able to look for yourself, to be there for yourself, to set boundaries and to hold space for yourself once you get in touch with your emptiness, and once you get in touch with your missing self-love, and how you have learned to abandon yourself just as they have done with you, that you have adopted these attitudes towards you, and that you have made them yours, and this is your limiting belief system, and that you are absolutely capable of getting out of it, but it's not, let's say, a walk in the park, It is really hard work with yourself, where you have to overcome your limiting beliefs, and where you have to overcome, let's say, your feelings of guilt and of not being enough, and of your seeking approval from those people who will never give you approval. Okay, being more true to yourself and being there for yourself and to holding yourself, and really this means also to be looking for therapy, for coaches, for a way to be with, let's say, healthy thinking people who can reflect you that what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're meaning, and what you're expressing towards those people is okay, because otherwise they're just going to get you into those dynamics over and over again. Okay, I hope this was somehow helpful for you to be able to understand why you can't follow up on your boundaries and on your limits, and why people wouldn't respect them. It's because you don't believe yourself and you don't reinforce them, and that's the problem. Okay, so there's much work to do. Check out this next video, which is being played in here, talking about how to get out of narcissistic dynamics and how you are involved in the dynamics and how to get out of them and heal. See you later. Bye-bye.